I like to talk about the long arc of practice because I think it's really important. It's becoming more and more important to me to recognize that regardless of what kind of mindset we might have when we first begin, I bet many of us who are here tonight didn't really think the first time they came to the Zen Center and got meditation instruction, or the first time they came to a Dharma talk, however many years ago it was, you might not have thought then that you'd still be hanging around now. It tends to happen to some of us, not all of us though. There's probably a lot more people who didn't hang around than did, I suspect. But those of us who did hang around, we're in for some very interesting developments, I think. At first, if I recall, there's a lot of activity going on in our practice life. There's the changes that we're noticing as our minds settle down a little bit from whatever kind of suffering or hectic life we might have been experiencing. And then we go to our first retreat and boy, we sit for 3 days and all of a sudden it feels quite amazing, you know. Wow, this is wonderful. I don't know if I've ever felt quite like this before. And we have those kinds of experiences where the change that we undergo during even just one period of sitting can be quite startling because it's fresh and new and maybe in juxtaposition to how our mind may have been prior to practicing. Things start to calm down a little bit. I don't know if that's always true, but it seems to be. But if we stick with it after things initially, we get used to sitting, we get comfortable. Maybe we aren't as, dealing with body issues so much, or pain in the legs, or pain in the spine, or not knowing whether or not we're doing it right. Those can be distractions that we have to contend with in the early days. Then it's possible that as we continue practicing for maybe a few more years or so, if we stick with it, something else maybe a little more subtle will begin to occur, and we might experience boredom perhaps. A sense of, oh, not this again, whether it be facing our internal mind set yet again in another sitting period, or hearing the same instruction over and over, or chanting the same chants over and over. It's possible that we might go wondering if we could spice things up a little bit or change the method that we practice to something better or more heroic or more spontaneous or more eventful or perhaps more efficient. We go through all those things, right? Because we're after self-improvement perhaps at this stage of the game. Well, I can practice, but I look at my life and I'm not noticing that it's getting much better. What's going on here? So we might be in that kind of mindset at some point along the way. I don't know when, but it might come up for you. At some point, though, we might resign ourselves to follow the instruction that we've been hearing about. And maybe the inner landscape has relaxed a little bit, and we've seen it all before. We've watched all 27 channels of our karmic television set that we keep inside of our mind. And we might actually try, when sitting, just sit. When walking, just walk. That we've been hearing that since day 1 or 2, but we might get around to actually trying it. Letting ourselves do just that. So someone hits a bell or a chugpi or a moktak, and we go to the Dharma room and we sit down and we sit. certainly, at any moment, a deluge of likes and dislikes can appear, but maybe we have a little skill with that and we recognize that and we can maybe let go of that or something. We respond to it in some way that's informed by our maybe now years of practicing. But still, there's a pitfall. The pitfall is wanting something or wondering if after all this time I still fight with my wife. What the heck is going on with that? Or so-and-so still gets on my nerves, or I still get angry at the people driving on the freeway. How come practice isn't working so well as I thought it might? Here I'm spending all this time doing it. What's wrong? Am I doing it wrong? Maybe I need to go see another teacher. Maybe I need to quit because the school is bullshit. Maybe I need to try harder. Maybe I need to try less hard. All of these things can come up at some time in the arc of our practicing. Maybe I'm ambitious and I want to become a Dharma teacher. That'll fix it. Then people will respect me when I come to the Zen Center. And then something else occurs and there's all of that whole trap, the candy box. Maybe I need to learn more about the sutras to be a better student. All of these things are coming and going and may appear for some, may not appear for others. I'm just speculating about some of these things, some of which are reflections of what came and went for me as I was practicing. Maybe we get a little more responsibility at the Zen Center. Maybe we're the head Dharma teacher. And then something very interesting happens. We don't have to spend so much time paying attention to our own mind. We can start trying to solve everybody else's problems, or troubleshooting the situation, or encouraging people, or telling them what not to do, or what to do, or giving instruction. And then we can get involved in all of that kind of stuff, which is another kind of a place that we can also see if we're not careful. We can see it as something that we can use to avoid the troubles that we're having just being with our own business. Isn't it interesting? I sometimes wonder if the senior people need to be left alone more, and we should let perhaps the brand new people run the show, because those of us who are doing it for a long time, but we need all the help we can get to stay with it. So those kinds of things happen. And in the Kongan interview room, there's an arc of that too. At first it's confusing and maybe challenging, and maybe we get ambitious, and then we get stuck on the same Kongan for 17 years and we hate it. And then we don't want to go in because we have performance anxiety, or we don't want to show ourselves yet again we've failed at our Kongan. All of these things can happen. There's a phenomenon, I think, that happens in the Kongan room where somebody has a little bit of status, and they have something about themselves in practice that they kind of have maybe some pride, or maybe they're just a good person and they're feeling responsible, and they get stuck on a Kongan, and it doesn't resemble their idea of themselves as being a good Zen student. If I'm a really good Zen student, I answered 55 or 60 Kongans. How come I can't answer this one? Am I a failure now? And then it just, all sorts of things come up. Someone who is younger than me became a teacher. How can that happen? Why? How can I trust and respect that person and go to them for teaching if I gave them meditation instruction, for crying out loud? What's that mean? So, okay, I'm going to stop with this, all these possibilities, because I think everybody, if you just look inside of yourself right now, you'll see something about how the arc of your practicing is at play. And we don't know where we are in the arc. We don't promise anybody anything along the arc. We just know that if we stick with it, that pot of potatoes that we've been stirring with the stick that never bothered us much before will maybe come down on us like a ton of bricks at some point. Perhaps the flat sort of affect of practicing, just maybe that is enriched by something that is very, very compelling. And we realize with the subtlety of our practice, we can see something we never saw before. We can perceive something about ourselves that we're stuck on, and we can perhaps have the honesty and the integrity to delve into it with sincere effort, even after 30 or 40 years of practicing. That may be what it's taken us to get just to this moment where we can actually do what we've been encouraged to do all along, with some depthfulness, with some sincerity, with some vigor.
Here's what I found from Collins Dictionary. Vigor is physical
Excuse
or
me.
mental energy.
Siri thought I was giving a Dharma talk to her. Siri, be quiet. I love technology. So we never know. We just never know. You may be on your deathbed taking what may be your last breath before you really settle in to practicing. You may have periods of time where your life circumstances really allowed for a depthful practice, and then now maybe you're in a period where all of that's just a vague memory, and your life situation doesn't allow for much more than just the briefest of maintenance or checking in. We don't know. It could be different for everybody. We're going to get it all of these karmic waves, regardless of what our title is or how long we've been in the school or how many wonderful kongans we've answered or Dharma talks we've given or whatever. There's bound to be a valley of despair about your practice and peaks of excitement. So what that means to me, and the reason I'm going into all this length about this, is that I think it really helps us to remember that our practice is just this moment, whether it's this moment that I've been entering into for 40 years, or this moment, the first day I've been to the Zen Center. The truth is, when Jeff's mind is clear and in the moment, his mind is not separate from the person who come to the Zen Center for the very first time and has some sort of momentary glimpse of quietude. It's not different. And it's not special on either end of the spectrum. It's just the invitation is always there for us to enter into that. And in spite of past successes or failures, or in spite of boredom, or in spite of distractions, or whatever it might be, it's our opportunity to let it all go in this moment. That doesn't have an arc. That doesn't have 30 years or 10 minutes. That's just this moment. Breathing in, breathing out. It's really easy to forget that. And, when we're getting caught up in running a Zen center or trying to incorporate Zen practice into our daily life, or doing all the things we manipulate in our lives with our various means as Zen students and Zen practitioners. It's pretty easy to forget that our job is to just experience ourselves in this moment without, as the head Dharma teacher said earlier, without adding anything or taking anything away, you know. There's a notion in martial arts. I know that you probably hear a little bit about martial arts because some of your people are very advanced martial artists, including recently minted Jiro Popsonin. My children did martial arts, and I witnessed a lot of their training and whatnot. And there's a notion that says, you know, you get your black belt and then your training can begin. Meaning that, you know, all of that business, all of the 12 gates and all of the learning the forms and all of the various stations along the way are just sort of a setup so that you can finally get around to practicing. I think it may be, there might be some validity to that, you know. Just when we think we're getting close to being finished, we can realize that we're just about ready to start.